The Retirement Cafe podcast, investing for grandchildren with the Child SIPP, Junior ISA and the use of trusts. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Retirement Cafe podcast with me, your host, Justin King. If you're thinking about your retirement or already retired, you're in the right place. My aim is to help you plan for and live a successful and meaningful retirement. Retirement is far more than just a financial event. It's a significant life event, a major transition, which will bring with it new challenges and opportunities. So each episode contains tips, information, and inspiration to help you feel more informed and confident about your retirement. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hello and welcome. If you're new here, a very warm welcome. I hope you enjoy this episode on investing for grandchildren and take some time to look around the website or your preferred podcast player. If you've listened before, welcome back. Are you one of those grandparents who has invested more for their grandchildren over the past year? Recent data suggests that 47% of grandparents have, which may or may not be linked to the pandemic and our spending patterns. Whatever the reasons, the benefits can be huge. Helping children to fund further education, maybe get onto the property ladder in the future, or even start saving for their retirement. Research from NatWest also shows that 3/4 of parents save for their children, but 83% of them stick with cash savings plans. The concern is that many people aren't aware that the impact of inflation means the purchasing power of these safe cash balances actually goes backwards over the longer term. When you consider that when you're investing for children or grandchildren, we're generally looking at the long term. For some, it could be as long as 50 years if you decide to invest in a pension on behalf of a child. Then cash savings may not be the best way to make your contributions work the hardest. Inflation in the UK, as measured by the CPI index, hit 3.2% in August, up from the Bank of England's target of 2% in July. And the jump in prices in August was the highest on record. I think the prices of materials, food and fuel are going up by way more than 4%. Either way, we're stuck with inflation at 3.2%, and this will be eating away at any cash savings you may have. You're lucky to get over 0.5% interest in instant access savings accounts. In fact, the average easy access account pays just 0.17% interest according to Moneyfacts. The best rate I could find for a 1-year fixed rate savings account was 1.5%, rising to a balmy 1.75% if you can lock your money away for 2 years. Even with this level of interest against the backdrop of inflation at 3.2%, your savings are being steadily eroded away. NS&I children's bonds are no longer on sale, having been withdrawn in 2017. But for those buying NS&I premium bonds, you're at least in with a slim chance of winning cash prizes ranging from £25 to £1 million every month. Anyone can buy premium bonds for a child under 16, and it is possible for them to hold up to £50,000 worth of bonds. However, the current odds of any £1 bond winning have been reduced from 24,500 to 1 to 34,500 to 1. And with over 110 billion bond numbers are eligible, the chances of your child winning one of the two £1 million prizes or 5 £100,000 prizes will be almost nil. This inflationary position makes the argument for investing any savings you make for children or grandchildren in the stock market even stronger. So I thought it would be helpful to release a podcast about the different options available to you when investing for your children or grandchildren. I'm also going to touch on and discuss the use of trusts. The two main options I'm going to discuss today are the Child SIPP and the Junior Stocks and Shares ISA. But before I do, I think it's worth mentioning the current position with child trust funds, as some of your children or grandchildren may hold these accounts. No new child trust funds can be set up from the 1st of January 2011. But those set up before that date can continue and top-ups can be made. Although, of course, you get no further government contributions into those plans. From the 6th of April 2015, it's been possible to transfer an existing child trust fund into a junior ISA. It's also important to understand the tax rules when investing on behalf of a child. For tax purposes, a child is treated in the same way as an adult, and so is subject to income tax, capital gains tax on their income and gains. And this means that they have their own personal income tax allowance, a personal savings allowance, a dividend allowance, a starting rate tax band, and a capital gains tax annual exempt amount. Now, this might all sound quite confusing, but for most people, it means there are opportunities to take advantage of the child or your child or grandchild's personal allowance and capital gains tax annual exempt amount. There are some details to be aware of when it comes to trusts, and it's important to check the details of any tax rules. So to be sure to get advice before making any investments yourself. So first off, what is a child SIPP? This is often referred to as a junior SIPP, with SIPP standing for self-invested personal pension. It's essentially a pension savings account for children, and this may sound a bit ridiculous to have at such a young age, but it's a really smart option. These accounts work like this. You, or anyone else for that matter, can invest up to £2,880 per child per tax year, and 20% tax relief will be added by the government, topping up the account to give your child a total of £3,600 each year. Investments are then free from UK income and capital gains tax for the child's lifetime. That's as the rules currently stand. A parent or legal guardian manages the account and makes any investment decisions until the child turns 18. The parent must set up the account, but as a grandparent, you can make the contributions. The other benefit is that gifts into a child SIPP will fall outside of your estate for inheritance tax purposes if it falls within your £3,000 annual gift allowance, or as long as you survive 7 years, or if the gift comes from surplus income. One major drawback for some people, however, is the money in the SIPP can only be withdrawn once your child or grandchild reaches age 55, and this age is rising to 57 in 2028. This is known as the normal minimum pension age, so the money really is locked in for the long term. Even with just a small amount deposited, the fund would potentially grow to a high level by the time the child reaches retirement age. And this is due, of course, to the power of compound interest over time. Having such a long-term investment window also allows more freedom to take a higher level of investment risk, as you will have a much longer horizon in which to ride out any volatility in the market. Based upon historic stock market returns, which I know can't be guaranteed in the future, this would give you the best chance of beating any returns you would get from cash savings, as well as inflation, as the investment has decades to mature. Another key investment option for your children or grandchildren is the Junior Stocks and Shares ISA. These accounts are also known as JISAs and work in a similar way to a normal stocks and shares ISA, but just with a few tweaks. They've been available since 2011 for all children under the age of 18, unless they already have a child trust fund. And as mentioned earlier, a child trust fund can be transferred into a junior ISA. The parent or guardian must open and manage the account for children under 16, but those over 16 can open their own JISA. The maximum deposit amount is £9,000 per tax year compared to £20,000 for an adult ISA, and this £9,000 can be split between a cash ISA and a stocks and shares ISA, but for this discussion I'm going to focus on the stocks and shares account. Contributions by parents or grandparents are considered gifts to the child, which will be taken into account for inheritance tax planning. Some or all of the gift can fall outside of your estate if the gift comes from surplus income or if you survive 7 years. It's best to get some advice on your personal circumstances, as it will depend upon any other gifts you make on a regular or one-off basis. This is why contributing to a JISA can be such an important part of your own inheritance tax planning. You can, of course, save for your children's education or for a deposit towards their first home in your own ISA, but that money would remain within your estate for inheritance tax purposes. The money in the JISA accumulates free of income and capital gains tax, much like an adult ISA. Your child or grandchild cannot gain access to the funds until they turn 18, except in exceptional circumstances, And on reaching 18, the JISA will automatically be converted to an adult ISA, retaining all of the tax benefits. Of course, both the Child SIPP and the Junior ISA involve locking your money away for the long term, but the investment time frame is much shorter with the JISA. So the Junior ISA and the Child SIPP are the two most popular choices for investing for children. But another important option is the use of trusts. The first thing to clear up, which can cause some confusion, is the question of express and implied trusts. Interestingly, where assets are held for the benefit of a child, even if no express trust is declared, i.e. no formal trust is set up, there will often still be an implied trust. For example, if a grandparent hands over cash or a cheque to their son or daughter with the intention that the money should be used for the benefit of their grandchild, the son or daughter will be holding the money as a trustee. In the absence of anything to the contrary, so unless it's recorded somewhere, they will be then subject to various rules which apply to trustees. For example, how they can invest, what then becomes known as the trust fund, what they can do with income and capital. In this case, it's a good idea for the grandparent to make clear what their intentions are for the money. For example, who should be entitled to what, when, and how, so that their children, who are in effect the trustees, can make informed decisions about how to manage the money. Let's now consider the choice of trust for children. If you know for sure that the investment you are making for your grandchild is for their benefit, a trust will often be appropriate. It could also have significant income tax, capital gains tax, and inheritance tax advantages. And as a result, many investment strategies for children will or should involve a trust. Now, there are three main types of trusts you can consider, and which one you will choose will depend on the rights that you want the beneficiary, i.e. the child, to have, how much flexibility and control you want to retain, the importance of the tax consideration. This will depend on who the settlor is and what the underlying investment will be. Of course, the amount that you're investing is significant as well. The three types of trust are an absolute trust, also known as a bare trust, an interest in possession trust with power of appointment, sometimes referred to as a flexible trust, or a discretionary trust. It's really important to understand that a trust is a means to an end and has a specific purpose. So let's consider the options and when you may choose to use each type of trust. So starting with bare trusts. Under a bare trust, your child has an absolute right to income and capital and can demand the trust capital to be paid over to them when they reach 18. Bare trusts would normally be set up when the settlor, that's the person investing in the trust, is absolutely sure who they wish to benefit. And one of the main benefits is the tax planning opportunities. With a bare trust, the child's annual capital gains tax exemption can be used for any gains made by the trust's investment. This is because for capital gains tax purposes, the bare trust is not a settlement. This is regardless of who the settlor is. This means that all gains are assessed on the beneficiary, i.e. the child, and not on the trustees. The disadvantage of bare trusts is its structure, i.e. there is no discretion whatsoever over it, who is entitled to what and when. And for this reason, a bare trust is generally only used if it offers specific tax advantages. The advantages are those very tax advantages, the ability to use the child's annual exemption for CGT, as I've just explained, and for gifts from people other than parents, provided the right sort of income is generated. The child's personal allowance, savings rate band, personal savings allowance, and dividend allowance for income tax. The rules are more complex with parental gifts and income, so to be sure to check out the details. If you're considering a bare trust for inheritance tax purposes, transfers into bare trust will be potentially exempt, i.e. no liability unless you, the settlor, dies within 7 years. And the value of an investment held in a bare trust will be included in the estate of the beneficiary. In fact, for trusts set up after the 21st of March 2006, for the gift to a trust to be treated as a potentially exempt transfer, the trust must be a bare trust. This is an advantage if a gift to another type of trust would result in an immediate inheritance tax liability. I'll touch upon interest in possession trusts very briefly, but their use is more limited when investing for children. Under this type of trust, sometimes referred to as a flexible trust, there is typically a beneficiary or beneficiaries entitled to income under the trust. Interest in possession trusts don't carry the same capital gains tax exemption benefits as bear trusts, and the rules for how income is taxed can be complex, so it's worth speaking with a qualified financial planner or tax advisor about interest in possession trusts. For most people, they have no advantages over a bear trust. The third option when investing for children is the discretionary trust. Under a discretionary trust, the trustees can decide who benefits, when, and how from the trust's income or capital. And as its name suggests, decisions about who benefits at the discretion of the trustees. What happens is that you list what's known as classes of beneficiaries in the trust document, which may include children and grandchildren. So no one specific person is entitled as of right to the trust income or capital. And that means that no one beneficiary is assessed to income tax in respect of the trust's investments. Instead, the trustees pay income tax at special trust rates, which are equivalent to those paid by an additional rate taxpayer. They are also liable to capital gains tax. A transfer into a discretionary trust or a flexible trust will be a chargeable lifetime transfer, and this means your gift is immediately chargeable to inheritance tax. However, tax will only be paid if your 7-year cumulative total, including the transfer into the trust, exceeds the current nil rate band. So it's important to know what your gifting limits are. There may also be periodic charges and exit charges to consider at later dates. But again, these will depend on the size of the trust fund at the time. So how do you decide which trust is right for you? It will depend on a number of factors, both tax and non-tax. I've outlined the main tax considerations, so let's think about flexibility and control and the rights of beneficiaries. Under a bear trust, the beneficiary is entitled absolutely and has the right to demand that the trust fund is paid over to him at 18 or her at 18. However, under a fully discretionary trust, the trustees have control as the beneficiaries don't have any immediate right to the capital or income of the trust. Now, that's a clear advantage for a discretionary trust if flexibility and control are important to you. In theory, there are no restrictions on how many settlers of a trust there can be, but in practice, each person making a gift is treated as a separate settler and there are separate tax implications. To keep things simple, it's not normally recommended that a trust is set up by more than one person unless jointly by a married couple. I've covered a lot of detail in this episode about junior ISAs, child SIPPs, and a number of trusts, so you may wish to consider when investing for children or grandchildren. It can be quite a complex topic, and if you're considering investing for your grandchildren for inheritance tax purposes, be sure to get professional advice, as the devil is always in the detail. I'll put some useful links in the show notes about things I've discussed today. If you have any questions, please get in touch either on email at hello@theretirementcafe.co.uk or via Twitter at JustinKingCFP. As you know, you can watch my conversations on YouTube by searching for Justin King MFP or following the link in the show notes. Why not subscribe either on YouTube or your preferred podcast player so you never miss an episode? Until next time, I'm Justin King, helping you feel more informed in your retirement.